Hello everyone, welcome to FAQ Friday. My name is Erin Peake. I'm an attorney here at Bonina Bonina, and I work on our team that handles the sex abuse cases that come into the office. Today on FAQ Friday, we're going to be talking about documenting your sexual abuse case. Specifically, we're going to be talking about evidence, what is evidence, and how can we preserve it when we're trying to prove our case and build it up to be as strong as it can be. The idea of evidence, it can sound intimidating. The idea of having to prove something to a judge or a jury can be scary, especially if the incident, the sexual abuse, happened a long time ago. But in these cases, there are plenty of different kinds of evidence that we can use to make our case. So let's start off with what is relevant evidence. Essentially, relevant evidence is any piece of information that can make a fact more or less probable, and that fact is important in determining your case. So in sex abuse cases specifically, what can be helpful is to sit down, take a moment, and think minute by minute, moment by moment, what happened. To build a mental timeline can be really helpful. Think about the who, the what, the when, the where. A lot of times in traumatic incidents, things can be kind of confusing. The memories can be jumbled, and that's totally normal. So if you feel safe mentally to do that, to sit down and even write it all down, a lot of the time that's a good way to get your thoughts organized. And then that way we can build the cohesive story of what happened, and from there start to analyze and pull different types of evidence and start building our case. So from there, for example, we can start with digital evidence. And that can include text messages, whether they were sent before, during, after. Phone calls, call logs are all saved in cell phones as well. And a lot of those texts and calls do have location and time data saved into them. So from there we can look at exactly where someone was and exactly at what time. So the substance of the texts and the calls don't even necessarily need to be about the matter. They'll all have additional information that's usable. In addition, in digital evidence, we often look to social media posts as well, or social media direct messaging. For that, we can look at, were people talking about an incident, an event? Did someone post about where they were? Did you check in to a certain location? Again, all of this, our lives are online all the time, as I am right now, and it all provides very usable information. And speaking of always being online, we live in such a digital world too that a lot of the times we're able to pull digital security footage type evidence. So if the assault or the abuse happened in a school janitor's closet, for example, a lot of the time schools have security footage in hallways. If on the night of the incident, the survivor maybe walked past a bank, right, there's going to be external security footage there. And in addition, a lot of homes now have their own security cameras and footage. For example, the Ring doorbell, which is the kind of popular little security camera a lot of people have on their doorbells. It can all be compiled together to build the strongest case possible. In addition, any images that were taken from any cell phones on and around the time of the occurrence will have data stored with the image about what time and exactly where the image was taken. So it doesn't even need to be an image of any evidence. It doesn't need to be an image of any substance. But if, for example, directly afterwards you took a screenshot of something, we're going to be able to find the exact time and exact location where that screenshot was taken. Again, all to create a clear story for a judge and a jury. In addition to digital evidence, we can look at any statements that you, the plaintiff, the survivor, anything you made afterwards about the occurrence or beforehand about any suspicions, security measures, anything like that. And these statements can be in the form of journals. Oftentimes, a lot of people will write in their diaries about something heavy that happened to them, or maybe they'll write about something that's ongoing, something that's really private. A lot of the time people journal about their mental kind of situation, what they feel, whether there's any mental or psychological damages. All of that can be written down and is often very, very helpful. And it's in your complete control at the time when you're writing it down, so it's often very vulnerable and raw and real. Speaking of the mental and psychological damages, if a survivor is in therapy at all, we can use those records, those therapy records, not just to verify the information, the story about the exact sexual abuse, the incident, but also to measure the psychological damages and what the abuse did to you in the long run. These events can be extremely traumatic, and the mental and emotional side effects are very, very real. And so therapy records are always really good in documenting the case, but then also finding healing afterwards. And then finally, in terms of personal statements, if the abuse happened anywhere in a building or at a school, a church, anything like that, if you had made any statements prior about your feelings about security, about a person who may be making you uncomfortable, again, all of that can be used and put in to build up your case later. In addition, in almost every single case, we have witnesses, because there are people everywhere, outside, inside, that you work with, family members. And these witnesses don't always need to see exactly what happened. They don't even always need to know exactly what happened, where, and why. But oftentimes, witnesses can be people like our friends who noticed, hey, this person's a little different after this moment. Or I saw this person and maybe their hair and clothing were all disheveled, and I don't know why, but I know that it was like that. Witnesses can speak to even the perpetrator's reputation in the community, you know. There are people everywhere, and they are often very, very usable sources of evidence in building the case. And then finally, if you are suing a responsible entity, organization, a workplace, we can often access their records to look for evidence as well. So in those cases, we can look at maybe Title IX reports. We can look at HR and employee evaluations over the years. And from that, we can start to build an argument as to why the organization may be liable or even complicit and aware of problems that are going on that can lead to sexual abuse. So in terms of preservation, it's always, always extremely important to preserve everything. Do not throw anything out. Do not throw anything in the trash. Even if you're not sure you want to bring a case, that's totally normal, because a lot of the times survivors' feelings can be very mixed afterwards. But it's important to give your future self the option of bringing a case by saving that evidence. Especially in terms of technological evidence, things like Snapchat, Instagram direct messages, things that can be unsent or deleted later. It's always great to take screenshots to protect your future rights and keep yourself safe and keep that story strong if you decide to do something moving forward. Some of our victims finally are concerned about the use of evidence against them. But I do want to note that in New York State and under federal law, a victim's prior sexual history cannot be used against them unless it far outweighs the probative value of that evidence. So basically what that means is your past sexual abuse generally can't be used against you unless it really has something to uncover about the story. Because a lot of lawmakers and a lot of lawyers and everyone who has kind of put the effort into creating these rules understands that sometimes someone's past sexual history can be used and can highly cause a lot of prejudice against that plaintiff. So just know that your past history more likely than not will not be used against you. I really hope this information has been helpful. As a reminder, it's not the victim's fault for the perpetrator's actions ever. And we look forward to seeing you next week on FAQ Friday.